Hey everybody, this is Coach Bill from Hoopsalytics, and I'm going to give you a comprehensive pro-level demo of everything you can do with the Hoopsalytics system. We're going to use the Florida Gators from their championship run in 2025 to show you the different ways we can break down and scout and also help you understand your team even better. So these are the 6 games in the championship. Let's start by looking at a game summary from the game against Houston. So here's how it looks. You get your score by quarters, running score, margin, etc. One of the cool things you can do is if you see a place where there's a run, you can just isolate on that particular part of the game, and the comparison stats will show what happened during that part. So this was a 12-5 run from Houston, or from Florida rather. You can see that Florida shot better, their 2-point percentage was better, etc. So it's a nice way to see what happened during a run. But let's look at the whole game. We'll reset the time range. And so these are the game summary stats. Anything in red means it went below a goal, and anything green means it went above. And you can set custom goals. So within the game summaries, you can just filter on those things that you've set a custom goal for, like so. And you can also edit your goals. So for example, for 3-point percent, we've set a goal of good being more than 33% and bad being less than 28. And so you can see that both teams were below. For turnover percentage, for example, kind of the same deal. Good is less than 12% turnovers, bad more than 18. So you can see Houston did well, Florida not so good. But there's a lot of cool stats in the game summaries. You get your points per possession, your 4 factors, possession length, percentages, etc. Even some cool breakdowns like the rate of at the rim shooting percentage, short mid-range, long mid-range. I like to look at scoring opportunities, which is your offensive rebounds and turnovers. You can see that Houston had many more scoring opportunities, and they probably should have won the game, but Florida was just a better shooting team. You can also see your 2-point rate. So Florida shot 54.7% of the shots from 2, 45% from 3. Houston was a lot more 2-point shots. Your turnovers, lost tie-ups, and tie-ups are pretty important. We like to look at that. And further on down, we can see fouls on 2-point shots and 1 fouls. And one of my pet peeves is non-shooting fouls in the bonus. And Houston committed 3, Florida committed 2. And like everything else in Hoopsalytics, everything's video linked. If you want to see those particular fouls, here they are. So here's one loose ball foul in the bonus. Like so. Also, some cool coaching data, your offensive rebounding 3-point percentage, offensive rebound 2-point percentage, etc. Baseline out of bounds, sideline out of bounds points, starting from live ball, dead ball turnovers, etc. And even some defensive metrics like kills. A lot of coaches like to find how many possessions, 3 in a row, that they stop the other team. That's what kills are. Again, a lot of really cool stuff for you. One of the most useful features of the game summaries are the timelines. This is a great way to visualize what's happened during a particular game. So here's Houston, for example. So the shaded parts are when Cryer played, white parts are when he sat out, green dots are makes, red dots are misses, big dots are 3s, little dots are 2s. You can do the same thing with lineups for the game, see how each lineup did as you go. And you can get cool things like plus minus, or turnovers, or fouls, and kind of see what happened during the game. Looks like Houston committed a lot of fouls in the second half, pretty clean in the first half, and then the plus minuses are also very informative. So let's move on to box score stats. So we're going to go to all the games in the championship series, and we're going to go to player and lineup stats. And so this is the key stats that we've set up. And again, everything is video linked. So if you want to see, let's say, I don't know, some of the 3-point shots that Walter Clayton made, just click on the 20. And here's one of them. Looks like a logo shot coming up. That's pretty crazy, right? Again, anything that's underlined has a link to it. One of the cool things you can do with Hoopsalytics, first of all, is you can customize these views, right? So with the key stats view, for example, I can go here And these are all the things that appear, but let's say I want to add, when they got fouled on 2-point shots in the key stats, I would just go like so. And then that appears in the box score. And you can also move things around or delete them, etc. So I can go back to that one. I can move it up and down if I want, or I can just take it out. Super simple. And so within the player and lineup stats, you also get different views. So for example, the key stats is the default. You can look at just an offensive view. And it looks like so. Again, usage rate, fouled on 2s, fouled on 3s, etc. One of the things I like to look at is offensive points per possession, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but you'll see that's a pretty important thing that nobody else has. And you can also exclude garbage time from your stats as well. So you can mark garbage time within your games, and then the stats will be more reflective of when everybody's actually playing hard. So the other cool thing you can do is not only with players, but with lineups. So you can look at the different lineup combinations and see how they did. Again, if you want to get sort of like a key stats view on this. Again, I like to look at net points per possession, so we can pretty quickly see which lineup was the most effective. And we can just show lineups that had at least 5 minutes of playing time. So on a net points per possession basis, this lineup was the best in the tournament. This one is second best, not too far behind. Another really cool feature of the lineup analysis is you can see how they did in each game with timelines. So click the magnifier next to the lineup. You can see their game-by-game stats. And the really cool thing is the timelines. So you can see when each group played. You can see the plus minus for each stint that the lineup played in, as well as other things like turnovers, assists, fouls, etc. A great way to visualize how your lineups are doing. And also with a lot of these reports, you can show just a particular time. So if you want to see the last 6 minutes of every game, which lineups did well, here they are. You can do the same thing with players. And so if I go back to here, go to players. So within players, one of the other neat things you can do is you can exclude them or include them in everyone's stats. So for example, if we want to see how everyone's stats did when Will Richards was off the floor, just click like so, and it recalculates. So now you can see Walter Clayton had a ridiculous effective field goal percentage when Will Richards was off the floor, etc. So you can kind of see how each player affects the other ones individually. And likewise, when Will Richards was on the floor, go like so. And so this is all the individual and team stats for when Richards was on the floor. Again, really handy to see how each player affects everybody else. So let's move on to the shot chart. The shot charts are super cool. One of the things you'll notice is, shot charts have green dots for makes, red dots for misses, but we also do fouled attempts. So the blue dots are fouled attempts. So for example, you can just see where Florida was fouled, trying to make shots. Looks like they got some fouls outside of the 3-point line. Coaches hate that. But we can also isolate on different kinds of shots. So we can say, let's just look at the 2-point shots, like so, and let's look at all shots. And for some coaches, they don't like the long mid-range. So what you can do is you can filter on distance. So for example, let's look at all Florida's 2-point shots outside of 15 feet. They didn't shoot too many, but they were 1 for 7 on those shots. Let's look at their opponents. Their opponents were, 3 for 12, still not great. Again, those are the kind of shots you would normally live with as a coach. If we go back to Florida, for example, and let's show everything again. We can also look at 3-point shots below the break. We can isolate on the region like so. So you can see, Florida was pretty good on those. 8 for 18, Clayton 3 for 5, Will Richards 3 for 7, etc. Or you can say, let's show 3-point shots outside the break, 34%. So kind of a nice way to isolate on different kinds of shots that people are taking. You can also do this from sets as well. So we can say, let's look at all shots from, say, their double fan set. Looks like they just got one. Or all their blob shots that we marked. But like so. So you can see what kind of sets are generating what kind of shots, kind of how that works. Oh, the other cool thing you can do is show shots that made offensive rebounds. So for example, let's go to here and let's show just the 3-point shots and show the shots that had offensive rebounds and where the rebounds come from. Kind of cool. Or let's just isolate on shots from this side and see where the offensive rebounds came from. So again, it's a good way to educate your rebounders on where they should try to position themselves to get the best opportunity to get a rebound. Normally you're opposite, but it could be per particular shooter, for example. So Clayton, looks like he sometimes it goes short, sometimes it goes long. It's a small sample size. But again, you can get a pretty good idea of how you can optimize rebounds using this particular thing. Okay, let's move on to coaching stats. So as you get a breakdown with Hoopsalytics, you can mark your different plays and sets and actions. We don't have total access to Florida's playbook, but we found some good resources from Gibson Piper's Half Court Hoops, where he did a full breakdown. And we picked and choose some of the things that we saw that we're pretty sure that this is what their play call was. So you can see, for example, the handback, they had 3 sets, they scored 2 points. When there was an outcome, sometimes there's a no outcome on an inbounds play, so we'll mark that, and it won't affect how well that particular play did. But the strong was 3 points when there was an outcome. And again, if you want to see the success on that one, this is what it looks like. Like so. And again, you can also isolate by half or whatever. You can look at your set offenses, same deal. They ran a lot of horn sets. You can see that they're 1.48 points per outcome on horns. But you can also include or exclude players on this coaching stat. So for example, let's look at horn sets with Huff playing. So they were 1.48, but if we recalculate, now we look at it. So they're even better when just Huff was playing on that. Or let's take Huff out and see how they did on the horn sets when Huff was not playing. And so a little bit worse. So that's a good way to see which sets are working well for which players. Works for inbounds plays, sideline out of inbounds plays, transition, all that stuff. So it's again, it's a really cool way to see what things you should be running with which players. Player impact. This one is one of my favorites. So this shows how each player affects team stats when they're on the floor, off the floor, or the net. So for example, we can look at all individuals. So this is how each player affects team stats when they're on the floor minus off the floor. So the green is a positive impact and the red is a negative impact. So one of the things I really like is the net points per possession, which shows how each player affects two-way stats. And you can sort just by clicking on the top of the column header. So for this Florida team in the tournament, Huff had the best two-way impact of anybody else. Hanloken was second. Will Richards was third. Curiously, Walter Clayton actually had a negative impact, maybe because his defense was pretty good, but offensively, his offensive points per possession didn't do nearly as well, probably because maybe he's taking a lot of logo threes or something like that. But you can see lots of different categories. For example, who's your best defensive player? Right, let's click on defensive points per possession. And you want also people that have a certain amount of playing time, let's say average of 4 minutes. So Elijah Martin looks like he was the defensive stopper on this team. Offensive impact was negative, but his defensive impact was really, really good. Will Richards also a good defender. Walter Clayton, decent. Aberdeen, not so much. So again, if you're looking to figure out who your defensive stoppers are, this is a great tool to use. Likewise, who's helping the team get offensive rebounds? Hanloken, etc. Who's helping get defensive rebounds? It turns out Walter Clayton had a bigger impact on that. Maybe he's boxing out or doing other things to enable his team to get rebounds. But if you need a turnover, for example, let's look at the defensive turnover possession. Will Richards caused more turnovers as an impact than anybody else. So if you're losing late in the game, this is probably one of the guys you want in to try to steal the ball and get a turnover. And you can also do the same analysis for groups of 2 or groups of 3. It's a little more computationally intensive, But again, it's a nice way to see who plays well together as a pair or as a three. Okay, let's move on to shot analysis. So what we did with Florida is we categorized all the different kinds of shots. These are the different kinds of twos they took and the percentages. We can also look at the three-point shots. And we see some interesting things here. So, for example, catch and shoot, 29%. Walter Clayton, 3 for 10. The other one I like to look at is pull-up jumpers, 50% for Walter Clayton, 6 for 12. Overall, the team was 36%. Again, you can customize this. You can create your own shot nomenclature, whatever. As long as you mark it, Hoopsalytics will do the calculations for you. A pretty good way of seeing what's effective. The other thing you can do with your shots is you can set up attributes. So for three-point shots, we did different levels of how contested they were. So contested threes, team was 33%. Lightly contested, a little bit better. Uncontested, 9 for 12. And curiously, with wide open, they were worse, probably because they didn't let Walter Clayton get any wide open shots. But you can see, Walter Clayton, 38% contested twos. That's pretty darn good. That's probably why they never got any wide open shots. Some of the other guys not nearly as good with the contested twos. Typically, you'll see contested threes are a lot worse than everything else. And again, it's illustrative to your players to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't be taking those contested shots. Again, it's up to you how you want to do that. And you can also see different things. What's the frequency? So Clayton shot 78% of his shots were contested twos. That's pretty crazy, but he can make them, so you got to let it go, right? Let's look at action tagging now. With Deluxe Stats, you can add any kind of action that you want and see how well it did. So, for example, we can look at the scoring efficiency on high post catches. Again, we just did a couple games in this sample, but for example, Huff had 5 high post catches, 2 points every time one occurred in a possession. You can also do this by sequence if you want, where there's a dead ball, it basically starts a new sequence. Again, same thing. And you want to see high post catches look like? Here they are. And one of the other cool things you can do is you can also tag what's called led to score. So this is where there's an offensive action that actually turned into a score here. So again, Huff had 4 high post catches that turned into a score. Condon had 1. Let's look at Thomas Huff's high post catches and how they turned into scores and see what they look like. So here's a good one here. Very nice play. So again, action tags are all customizable. You can also do the same thing with defensive fails or defensive praises. Coaches can basically customize this and mark them on their own. So if you have a bad closeout, you can quickly see the bad closeouts, who does what, etc. Super powerful. We also have a rebounding report, so you can see a little more detail on how the team does with offensive rebounding, 3-point, 2-point, etc. Florida offensive rebounded the 3-point shot really, really well. So for example, we can just look at like offensive rebounds from 3-point shots. Here they are, and here's where the shots came from, where they made those rebounds. The assist maps are also really cool. You can see who's feeding who. So the darker squares show where there's more activity. So for example, Huff and Clayton had a lot of nice chemistry together. So for example, here's one. Like so. Again, sort of a nice way to visualize how everyone's working together. And one of the things that Todd Golden uses is weighted stats. So what you can do is you can add different weights to different event types and come up with an overall per possession score. So for the tournament, these guys didn't have a lot of playing time, but Huff was actually the most valuable player in terms of how we decided to weight the different events that occurred. Chinyelu was also a big impact. Hanloken again was also pretty good. And so the weighting looks like this. So you can basically just say, show me all the things that have a weighted value. So when you're computing this, assists was +3. You get fouled on a 2-point shot, it's +2. And you can set whatever weights you want. Some can be negative. Lost or tie up, that's sort of half a turnover. and different shot types. So, made 2-point shot is +2. If it's a layup, we give you an extra 2 points for that. It's off a basket cut, we give you an extra point. And you can play with these, and basically it helps you determine who's doing the things you want your players to do, and also gives you sort of a customized leaderboard, above and beyond just shots and assists and rebounds and stuff like that. Again, a lot of the high-level coaches use this, like Todd Golden, for example. I don't know if this is his exact weighting system, but you can take advantage of this as well. Some of the other cool things you can do is you can do a game-by-game summary. Here's Walter Clayton, game by game. And we also do this cool thing called timelines. So this is also available in the game summaries, but you can show shooting, rebounds, turnovers, etc. So the red dots are misses, the green dots are makes, big dots are threes, little dots are twos, blue dots are where they got fouled. So he got fouled on a 2-pointer. And this is a good way to visualize fatigue. Over the course of a season, you can see how different players do at different parts of the game. The shaded is when they played, the white when they sat out. But we can look at fouls or assists, or even like plus minus, which is kind of cool. So you can see, for each stint that this player was in the game, what was the overall plus minus. In this first game, that was kind of a blowout there, plus 19 when Clayton was on the floor at the start. Again, super helpful. And the last cool thing you can do is what we call trends. So for example, let's look at like 3-point shot percentage, and we can average this over like multiple games if we want. So you get a sort of a smoother idea of trends. So we're trying to see how the team improved or got worse 3-point shooting. And you can see that they got a little bit better, but as they got further in the tournament, teams played better defense, and the 3-point percentage went down, which is kind of to expected. But if you've got a long season, you can sort of isolate on a different stat or even a different player, right? So let's look at Clayton, for example. And you can see, are they getting better? Are they getting worse or staying the same? Clayton had a little bit of a dip here. He got back, etc. But there's all kinds of different categories you can do with this. At the rim shooting, etc. About 30 different things. So again, it's a nice way to evaluate if your players are getting better or not. You can also add your own events and detail to any game. So from just picking a game, go to the More button. Let's look at Add Scoring Detail. So this is the timeline and how you score different kinds of events and add your own detail to it. For example, we can look at this shot and say, okay, it was a catch and shoot. Maybe it's something else. You can add your attributes to it, update it. You can also add it to clips, either to a film session or just individual game clips. So from here we can say, nice play, add an emoticon to it. Who was it about? Was it offense, defense, etc.? Want to add it to a film session like so, or you can also show it in your game clips. But it's a really easy way of building customizable film sessions, which I'll show you in a second. The other thing you can do is you can create your own offensive actions. So for example, we can say, for this guy, what did they do? Was it a DHO and slip, ghost screen, any of the stuff? These are all customizable. We'll give you a few stock ones, but we can show you how to customize it. Looks like so. This is how you customize the scoring panel. So if you want to do like add foul on a 2-point shot to the main scoring panel, for example, look like so. And when you go back to the game, now you can see we've got 2-point fouled and 3-point fouled as events that you can tag to your game. With defense, you can add it to the scoring panel, or you can just go like show more, and we can add like a defensive fail, for example. Maybe Richards got blown by. You'd add it like so. So again, it's super easy to customize these things. All you have to do is add the events, and Hoopsalytics will do the calculations for you. And finally, let's take a look at the film room. So this is what a film session looks like. You can add some comments to it. For example, we don't really like this shot, so we're, next time we have Clayton in, we'll take him aside and, maybe show him this one. You can edit your clips like so. So you have a comment, emoticon. You can start and end the clip whenever you want. You can also create MP4s out of these if you need, or you can just have a sharing link to share with your individual people. You can also move the clips up and down pretty easily. But again, it's just a super simple way of doing your video breakdowns and creating film sessions for your team and coaches. Let's do one more example from the box scores to show you how you can get even more insight into what's happening with your team. So for turnovers, for example, we've classified them in different ways. So if you click the little magnifier, you can see different kinds of turnovers that were tagged. You can also see who's more likely to make what kind of turnovers. So for example, 27% of Clayton's turnovers were lost dribbles, 50% were bad passes. As a team, you can also see this. So the team, 33% were bad passes, dribble lost, some takeaways, some drop passes. But it gives you a pretty good idea of what kind of things you need to work on as a coach to minimize turnovers. And you can get the same sort of analysis for all kinds of different things. Here's another really cool example. Let's look at 3-point attempts. And let's look at 3-point misses. And we can see how much a 3-point miss is actually worth because of offensive rebounds and kickouts and stuff. So the scoring efficiency as a team for a 3-point miss is 0.7. So even though they miss a 3-point shot, just the fact that there was one in a possession, they're still scoring 0.7 points in that possession. Probably because this team is a really good 3-point offensive rebounding team. But it's nice to know that shooting a 3 is not necessarily worth 0. It just depends how hard your guys or gals go to the rebounds. And finally, we can look at game flow as well. So this shows how your team does versus other teams at different segments of the game. Here we've got 2-minute segments, but you can also break it up into, like, say, 4 minutes. So you can see, in the second 4 minutes of the game, Florida was really, really good. Last quarter, they were really, really good. Just another way to get good insight into your team and how they do at different parts of the game. So that's an overall tour of Hoopsalytics and showing all the advanced stuff that we can do. We get better and better every single day. We get a lot of great ideas from coaches like you guys, and our founders are coaches as well, so we also use Hoopsalytics to make us better coaches too. So give it a try. You can sign up for free, upload a game. It's reasonable, it's powerful, it's way more useful than Huddle and Synergy and anything else, and I hope you'll sign on. So thanks for watching.